Hello.
You couldn't wait to do that.
Hello.
Hello, we got
Hello.
Colton Avery on
Colton
the podcast.
Avery on podcast.
Hello.
Back at Kamp.
That was a perfect intro.
We have our very good friend, longtime collaborator, incredible songwriter, amazing singer,
incredible person,
great
man.
guitarist,
Hey, thanks.
good
Thank
guy
you.
from what we know.
Yeah, thank you.
We don't know your real
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
yet,
say.
but Colton Avery's in the house.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is a dope setup, by the way.
Thanks, man.
I've always just seen this, like, obviously from the footage. I'm
Dude,
like, where are they shooting this at?
Stevie built this set with his bare hands, bro. He cut this wood.
What?
He cut his wife is so pissed because like she's like, where
Was
did all
this,
the
was this supposed to be their kitchen floor? Or
well,
something?
no. Like all the trees are missing in his backyard, and his wife was like, "What the fuck?" He was like, "Yeah, well, I had to cut all the trees down to build
this cabin.
this cabin, and you know,
What?
I'm sorry
Is that facts?
I'm sorry that your family had to suffer, Stevie, for us to have a good podcast set, but I do think it was worth it.
It was worth it. Yeah,
It
you
looks
made
wicked. Is
nothing
that true?
from
That's
it.
true story?
Yeah,
You cut
yeah.
down your backyard?
Yeah, if you feel it, you can tell it's real wood.
That's the giveaway. Yeah.
Yeah. No, man. So let's get a little history from you because you're a lad with a London accent. You started
People
your life.
say I have an accent. Like,
You started your life in New Mexico.
yeah.
So how the fuck did that happen?
How did that happen? How did my life start in New Mexico? Well, yeah, I was born there, obviously, like back in 1990. There's not much really to say about New Mexico because if you've ever driven through it, like you've seen it.
Well,
we
especially where you're from.
yeah, well,
Farmington, New
Farmington.
Mexico.
Hey man,
You
I
might
don't
like
know.
it though because the fishing. Like there's rad fishing there apparently.
Is that where like San Juan is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can I tell you my favorite memory of driving through New Mexico?
Yeah, sure.
Stopping in the middle of nowhere and getting the most fire breakfast burrito that had hatch chilies in it. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
I know
another
you
time we got
remember
a breakfast burrito and they had mashed potatoes in it, and it was so fucking weird. Like I did not like that at all.
You don't like mashed potatoes in it?
In the burrito? No. And
Yeah.
another time we were at a place in Albuquerque and I was like, do you guys have hot salsa? And she said, yeah, right over there. And she pointed at it and it came out like it was like steaming hot.
Oh, like
It made no
literal
sense.
hot,
Yeah,
literal
it was
hot,
actually
like,
hot.
like temperature
Yeah.
hot salsa.
Yeah, it was hot. It was like hot, mild salsa. It was weird.
Ryan's had weird experiences with burritos. Does he know about when you chipped your tooth?
I chipped my tooth on a breakfast burrito. Made no sense on tour.
Where were we?
Wait,
We were somewhere.
I think we're
kinda
in
shitty.
California, I think. I can't remember. But
What? On what?
eggs.
You chipped your tooth on the
Dude,
eggs?
I don't know what it
They're
was.
hard-boiled
I don't know what
eggs.
happened. There's something in there. There's something in there. That the server was like walking out. I take a bite, and it like as I'm looking up at him, I like my head like violently.
Yeah,
shakes
like did
'cause it,
yeah,
breaks. I look up at him. I'm like covering my mouth. He's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I just broke my tooth."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Dude, there's something in the eggs." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And he goes back and he comes back. He's like, "Yeah, they said there's nothing in the eggs." I'm like, "Well, they don't normally fucking break teeth, dude. I've got a broken tooth." And then I still paid. I still had to pay and walk
They still
out.
made you pay?
Yeah, and we were on tour,
Even
so
though
I
they
had
could
to I had to wait
visibly
5 days to get home and go to the dentist. It was a good time.
One time when I was serving tables, I served this table a thing of nachos.
Yeah.
Dude found a piece of razor blade in his nachos.
What?
It was a piece of the big choppers for like potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
The dicing machine.
Yeah, the ones that have
A
the...
piece of the dicer broke off and was in the veg mix that was in the nachos.
That's fucked.
He could have died, bro.
That's crazy.
And you know what's crazy? This guy was so cool. He was like, he came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I know stuff happens, but I found this in my food." And I was like, "Dude, you could sue us right now.
I'm so like
walk away with millions. Why are you being so nice right now?"
I'm so non-confrontational. I'd probably do the same thing. Like I'd be like bleeding internally and just be like, "Hey, dude, I don't want to be like that guy, but I think I'm gonna die right
But
now."
I'm bleeding out of.
Yeah.
But I'm bleeding
I
out of
think
my
you guys
ass
just
right
killed
now.
me, but like it's not your fault. You're the server. You didn't cook it, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that too.
I don't
sending
like
stuff back
turning-
or like, yeah.
I don't like that at
I'm
all.
like, it's fine. I'm like, it's fine, guys.
I went to this like Michelin restaurant once in LA, and it was like the steak restaurant, and spent a shitload of money. It was really dumb, but everything was like really good, and they brought the steak out, and it was like way overdone, and it was like inedible.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just too embarrassed to tell him I didn't like it, and so I just like I didn't have him fix it. I could have easily just been like, "Hey, this isn't like right, and it's obviously not right."
Did you just grub it?
I took one bite and I left after I paid.
What?
You're like, "Sorry, I'm vegetarian actually."
Dude, it was the dumbest thing ever. After that moment, I was like, all right, I've got to
You gotta speak up for
I gotta
yourself a little
speak
bit.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a place
dude,
like
I'm
that, like
30
super
something years
expensive.
old, and I'm like worried that this 19-year-old server is gonna be like disappointed that he didn't even fucking make it. I don't know
When
what
he
was going
doesn't
through my
care,
head.
you know,
Yeah.
like the older you get, it's like they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to New Mexico.
Yeah.
So all right, New Mexico, you grew up, you moved to Arizona from there,
Yeah.
and
When I was like 16.
we got linked up because your dad was good friends with our manager Gonzo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were in like bands in the 80s together.
Oh shit.
Not in the same band, but like they used to play like Battle of the Bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wonder if he beat Gonzo's band.
I don't
Probably.
know.
Probably.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the history there.
Yeah.
I know they both had mental long hair. That's all I know. It's like
Yeah,
it's
dude.
super curly and mental.
Isn't it so funny to see like people with no hair or short hair, and you see an old picture of them and they just had the longest hair?
Yeah, it's like that's exactly my dad.
That's
Like he's
your dad.
bald. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like the first time we met you was we were headlining the Marquee Theater out here, and Gonzo was like, "Yeah, you know, family friend, we're gonna have him open," and you came out in a fedora. You're in your John Mayer phase for sure.
Yeah.
You're in that John
Yeah.
Mayer
Yeah.
era.
Andy went through his fedora phase too. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I
But you
can't-
came out on stage and you did the singer-songwriter thing, and then all these like 12, 13, 14-year-old girls were just losing their minds. And I was like, oh, this kid's going to do something. Like, and you were so talented. And that was like my first reaction was like, damn, people are like, these girls are going fucking nuts. And he is wearing a fedora, which at the time was actually cool.
I don't remember it being cool, like ever. Like
You just did
looking
it.
back, especially, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I remember that show because we played, I think, a couple shows after that at the Marquee where
Yeah.
I opened for y'all. But yeah, I
you
remember
ever-
feeling the exact opposite because like whenever I opened for you guys, I felt so uncool because like the scene in Phoenix, like singer-songwriters, like it's not the thing. It's not like LA where there's like a space for that.
Right,
like here,
right.
and so I always thought you guys were like, you guys were the shit to me. Like I was like, they're so dope. Like where do I fit like on this stage? So yeah, that was just
That's
a really
funny.
wicked show. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's crazy
Mhm.
because like we ended up, you know, you become a songwriter, and were you like doing a lot of songwriting before? Like how long did you start that before you moved to London?
I didn't. I was just an artist. It wasn't until I moved that the guys that signed me, they got me into writing for other people. So I kind of started that journey.
Nice.
And it was cool to see because like I had grown in that world, like writing for other people, and then being away from Phoenix, like I came back and like you guys were, like had grown so much. And I remember Gonzo hitting me up and be like, "Do you want to jump in the studio?" And I was like, "Heck yeah," because I just remember wanting to live in that world. Like
Yeah.
after watching you guys live and stuff, I was like, that music's so sick, and like just the swag that Andy has and like all of you guys have. Like there's such a presence that like is KATASTRO.
Yeah.
So I was so stoked to jump in.
I remember the first writing session we did with you was at Pepper's studio in Redondo Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was for Stars,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
And I remember that was the first time. I mean, I knew we had played shows with you before, but it was very much so like,
Like the fedora guy.
shit, that's funny. No, but I remember, seeing you in passing at shows and just basically saying hi, but that kind of
Yeah.
being it. And so like to hang out with you in the studio for the first time was really fun. And I remember, I mean, we had started doing random writing sessions with different people, or we had done writing sessions over the years since the band started with different producers or writers or whatever. And it was always so obvious to me within the first 5 minutes if Andy was like it was gonna work, if it was gonna work with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right when
Yeah.
we started the session with you, I remember all of us were like, Andy was hype, all of us were hype. It was like, it's so interesting how when you work with different like writers or producers, you know very quickly if things are like good or
Gonna
not.
match. Yeah,
Dude,
and
it's
when
like
it doesn't
musical
work,
speed dating.
It's a wave. Oh,
Yeah.
for
It
sure.
is. It's like you date that person. Like they come in and you're like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And you can tell from the
Yes.
start, like,
Dude, this is so funny. But I remember Jared or Duddy telling me this from Dirty Heads that when they first started doing the LA like speed dating thing for writers and producers, he said they'd go out and they'd go to literally 6 different sessions a week. And after a week of doing it, they had to do it for like a month. But after a week of doing it, Jared and Duddy came up with this code where like if the first 10 minutes of the session is just whack and they know like it's not going to work, one of them would pretend they had food poisoning. And
what?
they'd have like a code word for it. Yeah. And like they'd
You'd be
pretend
like,
they
dude, I gotta go.
Like,
man.
I gotta
Sorry,
go.
I hate to cut this short.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
That is funny. I would give myself like an hour approach. So like I would just finish a song. like I would just write super quick if I was ever in a session like that. Like if I could tell that someone was just playing me a beat and didn't want to collab, or like the vibe wasn't there, it was always just like, how fast can I write this song and get out of here?
Get the fuck out.
Yeah,
dude, that's a hard life. Like we've only really worked with songwriters a couple times. Like you're really probably one of like 2 or 3 people that we've worked with like that, but it's a hard spot in the industry to be in. You want to talk a little bit about like how that even works? Like how do you get hit up for it, or what you end up doing? Like what is your actual role as a songwriter for other artists? And
maybe talk about how you even got into that in the first place too.
Yeah. So I signed an artist development deal with this band called The Script. So that's how I ended up in London. And then they started, at first it was just more artist development. So I was in sessions learning how to write quickly for myself. Yeah. And like, but then they started putting me in sessions with other people. And how that works though is like, I was signed to Cobalt Publishing at that time. I'm with BMG now. So like they would send through all these people that would be interested in sessions. And so you'll typically jump in with like, I consider myself like an 80% producer. Like I'm not like a full-on producer role guy. So typically there's like a producer, a top liner, and an artist. And so you just start doing that. You go in and you start working with artists and producers, and just in those sessions, like through BMG or through management or whatever, you start like writing songs for them. And,
do you just kind of like sit at home and come up with melodies and like do voice notes and stuff, or so that when you're in the spot, you're like, hey, try this or try this or try that?
Well, that's one thing you learn really quick, because like in the beginning, I used to be like, oh, well, the artist will bring an idea and I'll just help them. And like, no, man, like a lot of times they don't even know what they want, or or anything. They won't bring anything. So I started doing this thing where I still do this, but like I'll spend an hour just writing song titles. And like one-liners, because a lot of times like that'll be
inspo.
Yeah, that'll be like what ends the chorus, right? And The Script actually taught me this for like pitch writing and stuff, is you start with the chorus, always work back, right? Because if you know where you're landing, the rest is all set up. And so it's like, oh, I can figure out a setup, but then to like set something up and not know where you're landing is a hard approach, you know?
That's a good one. I always like, when we do it, is we try to come up with the chorus and then we go, all right, that's the verse, now we need to beat it, and try to like...
Oh, that's sick. That's like some Rick Rubin.
Out hook your hooks.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That way the verse is super strong. If like the verse can stand alone like melodically as a chorus, then once you get to like the meat, then it's really kicking. The problem with that is sometimes what you're trying to make the verse is just the right chorus, and once you go in to try to make it bigger or whatever, it just kind of will fall flat, or it gets harder to like beat the thing.
Well, depending where you start as well, like note wise, right, for your chorus. Like
I think it was Zane Lowe, Jack Harlow interview. I thought this was really interesting, but Jack Harlow said that he's obsessed with finding like really dope one-liners being the first lyric you hear in the beginning of the song.
Yeah.
Like, my nail tech knows how to keep a secret, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
It like sets up this interesting, why'd you just say that? And then you have, but he talked about how like, I love setting it up first so that you have like all this stuff to go into.
Yeah.
But I mean, big songs for us were kind of that way too. Like, The Way I Feel.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that your attitude is fucking whack. Like, that's a that's a cool, that's a crazy first line of a song.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought that's really interesting when songs have this like really cool just first line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really sets the stage. Like whatever the first thing you say is, or musically, like you can look at it both ways, but it's got to be either the lyrics are super interesting and the vocals give it space, or the music is super interesting and the vocals like lead you to want to see what happens next. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I remember, you know, when we were working on, after we did Stars, we hit you back up for when we were writing Sucker, and we kept being stuck on the song Naked. Like, we were working on it for so long and we just could not come up with the right part. And I really loved the song, but we were about to scrap it. Yeah. And so you were living in London at the time, and we were just like, yo, let's hit him up. So I remember me and Andy did a Zoom call with you. It was like midnight where you're at, and it was earlier in the day, probably early for Andy, not too early for me in the day here, and just like doing Zoom calls across the world to like write the song. You came up with that main hook on Naked, and it was just like immediately, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That hook is
yes.
No, that was what was crazy. What I do. No. Well, what was crazy about that couple things is, I remember before Naked, you guys brought me in in a different role for like one session. I was in Phoenix for like a couple days, and you were like, yo, we're going to throw loads of instrumentals at you.
I remember that. I remember you coming to the studio. That was right when we moved into our studio.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, like right when we moved into it. That's crazy.
But you guys played all these instrumentals, and you're like, just like do melodies. And so I just sat there with the mic for like an hour and just threw down on like all these different tracks. And I remember one of them like being naked. But I remember walking away from that session in particular going like, they've really found their sound. Like, cause before that, I remember you guys being like a band, and then you moved kind of away from that in some ways, like experimenting with more like modern things. And then,
to be honest, yeah, we went through this period where like the band thing, I don't know how else to say this. I feel like we went through a period where we thought the band thing was lame and we wanted it to feel more produced, but I think the world was kind of moving that way. And I remember just being like, I remember having discussions with Andy about this, like after we did the Dirty Heads tour, but it was like, he was like, I want to do more hip hop drums and like do more like production stuff. Like, cause we just got off this tour with Dirty Heads and they were kind of on that wave. And so it was kind of this whole thing. Me and Ryan started learning more about like sound design and programming.
You got the synth and like,
you know, like around the time that I got my laptop and really started making beats and diving in on like programming drums, he was learning synths and stuff. So it was kind of like this just newfound, like, I don't know, new thing. And then I think when we made Sucker, it was like, all right, let's dial it back, bring in the roots of our band. And it was kind of like a beautiful combination of both, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was like perfect.
Yeah, like Washed, we discovered something new for us, which was the production. And then I feel like in Tropical Heartbreak, we kind of lost some of our identity.
It's so easy to do that.
I don't know, man. I think like our band has like a negative look at that album because it didn't stream as well as whatever than other albums. But I do think there's still some really incredible songs on that album, dude.
Yeah.
Like Antisocial's on that album, Pine. I think we tried to recreate a lot of stuff from Washed, but like, there's some bangers on that album.
There's some bangers, but I think just like as a whole, it like some of the sounds and like I was doing a bunch of like weird like 80s parts that weren't like really fitting with the sound. Like I do that a lot in our new stuff and you know, with you and stuff, but
I'm here to defend.
It just like wasn't.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. I just feel like it wasn't like fully realized, and it was another one of those sessions where we had 8 days to write a full album. Whatever we did was the album. Like I love the album. I think there's great songs. I think Older Me is a track on that like is, I think it's one of our best songs that we did, and it's just it never really streamed that well. So there's cool stuff on it, but I just think like Washed, we found something new. Tropical Heartbreak, we kind of lost a little bit of like who we were, and then Sucker, like we meshed everything that we've ever done into like finding what we were, and we had that was the first time we had time to like sit down and actually write for longer than a week and a half, you know?
Yeah.
So it worked out, and then now with our new album, I've had 2 years to go through it, but it's feeling good now that it's finally done.
Yeah, well, it feels sick because, you know, when I listened through it, felt like sort of a continuation of that blended sound, which is so dope. And even like a softer side, like Muse, definitely feels like an area that I've never heard you guys explore so much, other than like on your Bones records or something like the acoustic being. Like
that's how it started. We wrote it for Bones. So
nice.
Yeah, it was supposed to be on Bones 3, and we wanted to do something special and write like a new original in acoustic. And so we approached it fully from like that aspect of, you know, very like well meshing guitar and bass that go together really well. And that's kind of how we came up with that. But it was very much more empty until after Andy passed, and we were like, all right, we need to add to it. So we added the strings, and that was still supposed to be just for Bones. And then after that, we're like, all right, this song is so good. Like, we need to put this on the actual album. And then after that, we just fully produced out the ending. And like, that's, when I listen to that song, I think like that's one of the best things we've ever done as a band, is just getting that to where it became the song it is now, you know?
Such a tasteful choice. You know, I think like to decide to put that on the record when I feel like acoustic things for y'all was like such a compartmentalized world.
Yeah, like, it was always like this.
Just feels like beautiful. It almost reminds me of like my favorite records growing up, like in the early 2000s and stuff, where you'd have a band that was like more electric and stuff, and then have that one song, you know, like Incubus or whatever. There's always that one song that you're like, oh, it's acoustic, but it's dope.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's that for like this record.
Yeah, it felt good to like cap the album off with something like more sentimental, and then like we're gonna start the album off with like a pretty wild fucking track that is gonna be the next one, I believe. But
crazy thing about Muse too is that it's the only song on the album that was fully signed off on Andy like vocally.
Oh, nice.
Being like, yo, this is done. Okay. Everything else on the album were either demo vocals or unfinished songs that he was going to probably circle back to. Yeah. So it's kind of cool that like it in my opinion that might be like one of the most important songs we've ever made.
Yeah.
Which is rad. But I wanted to ask you, so like the last time that I spoke to you for a while, we had a really good conversation like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like last month or something. And you know, you've spent years writing and producing for other artists because of your publishing deal and stuff. And then for a moment, you kind of were taking a break from music, right? And then
I fully quit. I was like, I'm burnt. Like, I can't do this anymore.
For sure. And then, you know, now you're in this spot where you're writing for your own project and you kind of have this new, I don't know, I feel like from the outside looking in, you have this like new fire inside you to like, I don't know, be really grateful for what you have and then also be like excited to pour more into yourself and like your own project.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to hear what that journey has been like.
Yeah, man. So why I got burnt, I think, because I started off as an artist, right? So it was all focused around me, but I hadn't learned how to write songs quickly. So when I was really young, I would just wait for songs, you know? It was like, unless it came to me as like a full song, I wouldn't write. So it would take me forever. And when I met the script, they were all about like writing at high speeds and then working in LA and stuff. It was at high speeds and then getting into writing for other people. The more I did that, it felt like my stuff just became this amalgamation of like what everybody else wanted all the time. And not even like consciously. I think I was just in the rooms going like, oh, that's cool. Like, this is cool for right now.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, man, like just that over time, I forgot to even care about like what I was really interested in. I would write songs and be like, I think this will stream well for right now. Like one of my songs, and I love the song, but like, What Is It About the Night? It was like totally off the back of like Dermot Kennedy, Louis Capaldi. Like it was very calculated. I knew that would work. And same with like my song Religion. I knew it would work, but it just still felt like I was playing that game too much instead of like, what do I want? And then after quitting, it was really freeing because like I got a 9-to-5 job in like my first time doing that. But when I got back into music, I didn't care like what would work. I almost became the kid with the 16 track again. That was like, I'm just trying to make stuff that I vibe with. And then if I vibe it, then it's cool.
Yeah.
And then whether it streams or not, it's like up to the world. And like for the birds, really, it's like if I make it and I think it's cool, then cool. And so I started going back through tracks and then just writing about what I wanted to write about instead of being like, you know, is this Post Malone enough? Or, you know, whatever. You know? So now I'm just writing and it feels really good to me just writing for like myself and just doing what makes me excited and then just being like, well, that is what it is. And that's been really beautiful, I think, actually.
Yeah, it's so easy to slip into that hole where you are constantly like, obviously you need to be aware of what's doing well somewhat, you know, when you're an artist, and you got to be like, you know, somewhat current on how just music is moving. But it's really easy to not even realize that you're convincing yourself to like something that you don't really like just because you know other people are going to like it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've felt that, you know, as like a songwriter where it's like I make little choices and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then I realize like, that's just like what everybody was doing. And I feel like that kind of way when I hear a lot of vocal, like when Blackbird first came out or was like first blowing up, and then you hear like a bunch of like the altar boy switches and formants and stuff where like it is cool, but then it's like you start hearing thousands of people do it and then it's immediately not cool or not as cool anymore.
Yeah.
So there's like this balance of trying to stay true to yourself, but also putting out something you love, and also, you know, being realistic. And like there is a part about making music that requires people to want to listen to you, otherwise you can't survive, you know? So it's like once you get fear involved in either of those aspects, I think your music can like really fall apart quickly. But yeah, it's interesting.
It's almost like the same journey y'all went through, like all up to Tropical Heartbreak is like what I went through with writing. Because it's like you sort of look at the landscape and you go, oh, okay, the band sounds like not cool. Or it is cool, but just like maybe not the thing right now. And so you do pick up these new skills. right? And so everything you learned, like in how to make things quote unquote cool, like for me, it's like all those sessions writing for pop artists, I now have all those tools. And there's a difference if I would have started and been like, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want, but not having the tools to. It's like an artist who has the skills to make whatever and then choosing to make something that they like versus not knowing how and just making something abstract because with like being ignorant about it. Get what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot, especially like working with younger artists too, and they'll come in and they'll just be like, I want a song that sounds like Lil Uzi Vert. And you're like, okay, like who are you? Like, what does your voice sound like? Are you going to sound cool over Lil Uzi Vert beats? Because that makes a huge difference on just like the timbre of your voice and like all these different things. And it's really easy to be like, okay, like the biggest trend I think recently, or like maybe like a couple years ago, was rappers doing like pop punk. And then you see it happen at first and it starts doing really well a couple times. And then suddenly every artist is coming out with this pop punk thing. Everybody's hitting you up to be like, you know, we want to do like a pop punk rap thing. And you're just like, all right, but how is this going to stand out from
like what country's else? Going through right now?
I had a manager hit me up last year, asked me if I made any Blink-182 type beats.
Dude, I was in those sessions as well, man. That was one of the things that fueled the quit.
That shit is so funny, bro. That's such a funny text message to get.
Blink-182 beats.
I saw them. Yeah, that's literally what the text said. You have any Blink-182 type beats?
Yeah, songs.
Yeah, you mean songs that were recorded in a studio with a full band?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting time though, bro, because like there's so many different styles of music. There's so many different artists that are breaking boundaries of like what, I don't know. It's like, it's cool to see James Blake and Lil Yachty put an album out together.
Dude.
Or just, it's like so weird. It's such a weird, interesting time to be in music because I think now it's like people don't care what it is or what it sounds like. They just want to hear something different and that's unique. And that's what's so interesting. It's like we're constantly, and we've done it as a band forever. Like I think the most distracted and confused we've ever been in the studio were when we were talking about when we started talking in the studio about what other people would like. It was it was like looking back on any sessions that didn't really go well or we weren't getting anywhere. It's like the best shit we ever made was when we didn't care what anyone wanted. Me and Ryan and Tanner and Andy were just making shit we thought was sick.
Yeah.
That's literally how simple it is. But like, then you go on tours and you see other bands that are making songs that are making the crowd go crazy. And then you start thinking like, oh, well, how do I do that? You know, how do I copy the people that have more money than me, that have more fans than me, or selling more tickets, have more streams? And it's like, it's a game you can't win at, I don't think. Because you don't know what your biggest songs would be. Like when we put out Strange Nights, we would have known that Flow would still be our biggest song today. I was
gonna say Flow's like my favorite song.
It's like no manager at a label or an A&R or someone would hear the whole record and pick that song out and be like, that's gonna be your biggest song for the next 10 years.
Yeah, we liked the song, but we didn't even really think about it as an even possibility for like a single when that came out.
Yeah,
it's just and then like the track that made it on Outer Banks, you know, it was like Outer Banks was the number one show. It was the number 2 show on Netflix at the time, and it was only beat by Tiger King. If you remember how insane Tiger King was.
John B was like, dancing to our shit, bro.
John B was dancing.
John B was,
but it's like that track
so
too.
Fine while he was dancing to Under My Tongue.
That song was like we just never really thought about it after we released it. You know, it's like we released it, and then it's like there was never a thought in our mind that like this song is gonna like start streaming one day. You know, it was just kind of like it was a cool song, we liked it, but it's like we didn't give a fuck. And then 10 years or probably 6 years later, it's on the biggest show on like streaming services. But I think that back to what we were talking about a little bit, I think this pendulum is kind of swinging with the new TikTok era of music where people are actually finally starting to get rewarded for taking risk in music. And that's why we're seeing like, you know, obviously like big artists like Travis Scott came out cool, interesting music but now it's like it's very weird. He's getting like Bon Iver to help produce songs, and everybody's kind of branching out and just trying to make more art. It seems like recently, which I don't know. It's just starting to take off. I mean, even that Tommy Richmond song, $1 Million Baby, that's his name, right? Yeah, that song. It's like it's different, and that's why it's doing so fucking well. And it's like you can hate on it as much as you want because it's way played like everywhere you fucking go, but it's a good fucking song.
It's dope.
Like, those kids killed it. Like,
I think what's happening is like whenever Spotify first happened and there was like the weekly releases, I know that massively affected me affected me back in like 2015 because it was like for the first time I was now aware of everybody. Like before that, it was just radio, and you wouldn't really like.
Or you had your bag of artists. You had eight or nine.
Yeah, that you found.
You and your homies were like really into.
Yeah.
It changed everything.
Like overnight, which was crazy. And so before that, like, you had this really diverse. Before Spotify, there was like this really diverse swath of music because, like, if you think about even when we were kids, like Linkin Park versus like Blink-182 and all these bands that were coming out, like Incubus, all of them, they were all so different because none of them knew what the other person was doing.
Yeah.
Ever. It wasn't like they had these singles that they're like,
Dude,
last week they released this, right? And so you'd make this record all on your own and go, we think it's sick, right? And I think Spotify's now been around long enough where people went that route of like, we like everyone just releasing the same thing, that's cool, you know? And then people were like, we can now decide what blanket of music is cool. And Spotify really helped like define that. But now it's been around long enough where people are like, we miss the independence of these little niche people, like who are doing their thing over here.
Well, think about like when TikTok first started like really, really taking over, and like, or like when you started noticing that music was being affected by TikTok, I guess is a better way to say it. That song, like Cup of Coffee for Your Head or whatever, it's very like indie, but like low lo-fi beat. Like that one, after that came out and then it starts trending, suddenly you have 1 million people across the world all releasing songs that try to sound just like that. And another one might get rewarded at first, but now it's like, you're not standing out unless it's something that's fucking big and actually different because there's no more room. Because this one thing is so big.
Well, and even look at McGee, man.
Yeah.
Like, what a crazy sounding record that, like, it just, popped off because it is so different.
Yeah.
And, it's like that's what's required.
It is cool, like what you said. It's cool that people that are making genuine art seem to be getting rewarded again.
It's nice.
But, I don't know. It's just a crazy time, bro.
Well, you also see a mix of people now that aren't necessarily very creative, and they're artists, but they're like, James Blake and Lil Yachty did an album, I want my album to sound like that, and then they get somebody who's not James Blake to try to make something that's weird, and you're just like, all right, what the fuck is this? It's like, what's happening? This is all wrong. Like, just none of the notes are making sense and everything, but I think even that breeds more creativity because,
it does, because like they might make a mistake or something, or mistake like making that knockoff record that leads to something crazy. Like you never know when you're gonna stumble across some sound that you're like, whoa. Like even think of McGee and his guitar sound. It's like it wasn't until he plugged into that 8-track cassette thing and realized that he could use that like reverb as like a noise gate thing and come in when he plays super loud.
I read an article about that recently.
That must have just been like, whoa,
a magical moment where he's like, yo, this sounds sick.
You imagine, because it's like it shaped his sound like with Dijon and then over here on his own stuff. Like it's really defined his thing.
That guitar sound right now is the equivalent to like how everyone immediately started copying the drums off Currents.
Yeah.
Like when that Tame Impala record dropped, everyone that plays drums was like, yo.
Well, bass too.
The next time you go to the studio with your band, you're telling them, I want my drums to sound like Kevin Parker's.
I want like, the fuzz bass, like
those drums are wild, bro. And I Kevin Parker spent another thing too, is like the whole like Spotify, TikTok, just crazy streaming, all this stuff. I feel like it made it to where people didn't spend as much time on their music, and like it shows. You can hear that.
But the rawness is kind of cool too.
Exactly.
It's like punk.
Dude, no, isn't it weird that you can kind of like fucking hate every single aspect of the music industry, but also like look at benefits on. You're like, oh, it sucks that's happening, but then you're like, that's actually going to lead to something completely different, which is interesting.
For sure, because you got on one hand, it's like Kevin Park, like the Currents album. By the way, like he spent a lot of time on that album. I heard in an interview, I saw him say that he spent literally a month getting the drum sound. Like all he did every day was just like fuck with the DBX 160 and all the different mics he's using the Ludwig kit. And then on the other hand, you've got rappers that are literally on tour putting out, like recording a double LP while they're on tour, selling out shows because they can just rap over beats and make songs within 2 hours. And that's like there's something really sick and like punk rock about that, which is what you're saying. It's like, it's sick. There's just raw stuff coming out immediately.
There's things about both.
Like Kanye's recording his album in like a living room where there's like a ton of people around. Like he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Shit like that's sick too, you know?
But also like, you know, bedroom artists and like basement, you know, musicians are now becoming overnight sensations playing arenas. And like Shabuzi.
Yeah.
He's blowing the fuck up and found his way in the country scene, and he stands the fuck out. And so like that's cool because I don't know anything about like country. I know you're a little more in that world just from like songwriting.
The Oliver Anthony thing was wild.
Yeah,
like he recorded that on his phone, bro, on his Android.
What?
Yeah, that song. That's how that song blew up. It wasn't even like a studio recording yet.
Yeah,
Dang.
so it's like you can look at
literally like him in the forest with his guitar. Like, just dude, it's wild.
That's mental.
Yeah, and people are, you know, craving authenticity now too with just like social media and all that. Like everything trends more towards like I mean, as far as us on our band's Instagram and stuff, we would look at what does the best for us, and you know, just to try to get an idea of like which posts we're doing well, what's not. And it's like the ones that we're going off were like iPhone looking at the camera talking versus paying a person a bunch of money to like put it together. And you need that too. You need the professional quality stuff, but like realness and showing like real life, people are more gravitating towards that now.
Authenticity is everything. Like you think about the things that do set the trends and stuff as well, and it's always someone being super authentic. Like you think of the biggest artists arguably of like the last 8 years, like Post Malone, like no one sounds like that. And he always just makes moves based on what he feels. And they've always paid off because he's just so authentic in that. Yeah. You know, like other people feel like plants doing that. But like even his move for country, it felt authentic and he sort of was the first. And then it was like you could tell he was moving that even from his from his socials. And then it's like you got like Beyonce and Pharrell and like, he just feels really authentic doing all that stuff for some reason.
There's something like really dirty that it feels like dirty watching someone do something that you know is like very fabricated. Like you feel
I feel for them now, man.
You feel kind of for sure.
You feel like they're like you can almost not relate, but you at least understand. You understand. It's like once you start making a little bit of money and you're stuck in this scary thing, it's like what would I rather do is like sell myself even a little bit more for this or like go back to a life that I'd never wanted.
You saying that really like rings a bell for me because like at a time like I was on a potential trajectory of like things happening very fast. Like going around all the record labels, getting off that massive tour with the script and stuff. And I look back on that time so grateful that things didn't pop off because I didn't know who I was. And I was so compromised at that point. Like it was the first time in my life where I was taking on opinions and I thought everyone knew what was right except for me. Yeah. And so, man.
Like, and it was your first time ever like making money from music too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh shit. Like,
yeah. And so then like taking on everyone's opinion, like if that for whatever reason would have popped off, like it would have been the worst ever.
I think about that all the time with us in like the early days. It's like, dude, if we did become like super successful at that time, like I think it would have physically, like it would have killed us. Yeah. Like we would not have survived. We were a mess on like just the way we traveled. We didn't like on tour, just like drinking, drugs, just like whatever we wanted all the time being kids. And like, you see it a lot with like rappers where they go out and then they get money. Like we didn't have the money, luckily, and that's what saved us.
There was no pot of money.
That's what saved us, yeah. But it's like you see, and it just feeds this thing where it's like, oh, here's another $100,000 because you did fentanyl on Instagram Live and everybody loved it. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you get that kid to not connect? Oh, I make more money every time I fuck my life up even more and become more of a mess. Like, what do you expect?
It's like their reward system is all screwed up.
Yeah, what do you expect him to do? Because like, what would I have done at that age if I was like
gone back on the live and done it again?
Yeah, because like I was doing that for free. Like I was just getting fucked up and being an idiot for free. And if every time I did that, I was fucking given something amazing and a crazy opportunity happened. And you just like, it's so easy to see how all these kids like just get so wrapped up where they get a ton of money that they've never had before. They have no idea how to manage it or do anything about it because they're young and nobody fucking really does at that age. They don't have the right people around them, and then they're constantly, oh, you're the man. You have nobody telling you no. So it's just like whatever you want to do that's going to like make your life actually worse and harder is at the moment making it feel like it's getting way better and bigger. So
yeah, the push of like Vice in the industry is nuts, and like how that can like gain you followers or make you money, I find so crazy.
Yeah. Especially with that SoundCloud rap scene. I know a guy who is kind of like the godfather of those SoundCloud rappers. I think he like founded like Lil Peep and Lil Pump and Smoke Perp and all those guys. And like they would all live at his house and like because they were broke, and he would like buy them nice things and get them set up and like just have them so that their lives were going, and then they blow up and then they would all dip and never give him anything. And he's just like, dude, these kids, like, it just gets out of hand. And he, like, obviously I think the same thing kind of happened with him, where it's just, if you're in that life, it's really hard to get out of, like, it's not okay to like just constantly be doing drugs and constantly be doing this and, you know, acting like a fucking idiot everywhere you go. And now there's cameras everywhere and you can't escape it. So it's crazy. Just the whole culture and how quickly it shifts, how quickly it changes. And like bands are coming back now, which is nuts. Like I honestly thought that was just done for.
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy how it ebbs and flows, man. I really like that TikTok has promoted this, and I'll never forget the first time I saw it, because before that, like, Instagram was promoting this, like, it was all overdub stuff, you know, like, you do a video for yourself and it was you singing like the recorded version of your song, and that still happens on TikTok and stuff too. But I remember watching Lizzie McAlpine on acoustic guitar in her bedroom, and she just sounded wicked. And I found that off the back of that, when TikTok was super new, it like promotes this like refinement of craft, which I think super cool. Like, you have all these guitar players or these vocalists like, oh, let's go in a parking garage and just sing, and it sounds wicked. And Instagram didn't really promote that, and like Spotify as well. It all felt so like manufactured. It had to be perfect, right? And I really like that off the back of that, you have these artists that are raw, and like you're saying, like, bands are coming back. Yeah, and I think that all is like tied in from like everything being so processed for so long. Yeah. And then like the promotion of raw talent like that, and like really polished raw talent. It almost reminds me of like the 50s, like people going on doing killer just raw live performances where you're like, was that just through that mic?
Well, you see that now too, like everything being so produced over the years, like the whole country thing coming back so hard, or just like the idea of someone with just an acoustic guitar singing.
Well, an Americana as well, like, I never thought that was coming back.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
With your Noah Kahns and stuff, like, I thought that was back in our hipster days, like my fedora days, you know, and like where I was wearing the wingtips and all that, and like the cuffed pants and all that. Like, I thought
Farmington India is coming out.
Let's go. No, but I never saw that.
Hey, did you ever like Bright Eyes?
Bright Eyes?
Bright Eyes? Never heard of Bright Eyes? Connor Oberst. I was huge into Bright Eyes. It's like some emo, sad acoustic.
Oh, let's go.
I'm crying by myself shit. It's
really?
Good. It's good.
Dude.
I'm going to check that out when I leave here.
You've probably heard some of his songs.
Yeah. He's like got like this cleanest sounding voice.
Bright Eyes is sick, like, dude. Bright Eyes is dope.
My friend was obsessed with Elliott Smith.
Well, that's like Bright Eyes is like
darker.
It's like his like hero.
Oh, really?
Probably.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would all be drinking, and then he would get all fucking moody and put on Elliott Smith, and we're just like, bro, stop. We're not making it out of this house if you keep playing this music. Oh shit. So what's kind of coming up next for you? Right now we're working. We're hitting the studio tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we're in tomorrow.
No, that song's gonna be fire.
Sounds really good.
Thanks, dude. I'm stoked. Yeah. Finishing up Fashion and Beautiful.
Yeah.
Releasing that. Randomly as well, like, we've talked a bit, but like I've got all the side projects of like working for that restaurant on their music, and then like sound bitters and library stuff. And I finally, like, same deal with the pitch stuff. Like, I was just getting burnt, and the past like week and a half I've just been setting aside like a bit of time and doing stuff for me, and I found like the coolest thing. So I'm super stoked. I think there's like, if I can keep doing that, probably like an album's worth of stuff that's gonna be like ready to finish up soon. Like,
dude, I'm so excited for your new music. It's pretty different from stuff you've done, but it still fits really well.
Yeah, I think it's finally like me being me. There was aspects of, I thought because I started kind of singer-songwriter that I had to stay there. I think my first record was this weird hodgepodge of sounds, and it was really me just trying to figure out what I liked at all. Like, some of them felt like R&B tunes. There was like folk songs that were influenced obviously by like the hipstery time that was released in, and then I went full singer-songwriter, and then that never fully felt right. And I think this music just feels like it is a bit R&B, but also like a bit soulful, and I don't know, it's like a mix of some really cool artist, and I'm really excited to like just put it all together in what is me and what kind of has always been. So I'm stoked.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dude,
awesome,
it's been so awesome like writing with you because you're such an incredible singer.
Thanks.
And so I love working like melodically, but you're so fast that I almost can't even like get an idea out before you're even like, oh, I'm done with the chorus, and it's just like the best chorus I've heard.
No.
So it's really no, it's so much fun though, because I'm not like a singer, but I love writing and working with melodies and stuff. And so like working with you and just being like trying to tweak things, and then you giving me ideas and stuff like with music, and I don't know, it's just been really fun, and it's a different thing. And I'm very excited for people to hear what we've been working on with you and just like everything else that you got coming up.
Yeah, same. Speaking of that though, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it would be really cool. And the thing I'm interested in now is like, which is why we even linked up, because I was thinking of just producing my stuff by myself, and I was like, you know what, like I really want to try new things. And so even bringing fashion to you guys, like I thought I had that figured out, and like what you guys brought to that was like something I didn't know I needed. So I'd really love to try like in a session, if like I don't want to sing, maybe I'll just play music for a bit of it and have like you sing some stuff, and I'll just see where that takes me as well. Like I think it'd just be cool to try some stuff. I think that's what you learn with like time and age, which like we both have time accumulated in the industry. Like that's the thing, is trying things.
I know we're like wrapping this up soon, but
we're good.
We have time.
Yeah, we got time.
I've been thinking about this concept so much recently, and I've heard Rick Rubin kind of talk about this too, but I like the idea that maybe none of our ideas actually are our ideas, and we're just like pulling them in from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't believe that if you behave as if that's true, it can free you from getting bummed out if no one likes your ideas in the studio. And then also, because
they're not yours, it's like you don't claim them.
Yeah, and then also getting gassed up when other people have ideas that aren't your ideas, because then it's just like all of us sitting in a room
making the idea,
and we're just all like seeing where the idea comes from. It's like, if it comes from Ryan, dope. If it comes from you, dope. If it comes from me, sick. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, I think I just look back at all of the years we spent making songs as a band, and there were so many periods in the band's history, which is very normal for probably every single band to go through these turbulent times, whether it's a year, 2-year period where you're really not making anything because no one's getting along. Everyone's getting mad that their ideas are getting shut down. Everyone's egos get hurt. It's like us growing up as a band, like all of us had such big egos with that shit. Like we would get bummed and just shut down if someone didn't like our idea, and then it would turn into nothing getting done. But it's like, what if the ideas are just getting pulled in from somewhere else, and we're all just trying to see where things fit?
I think finding where
it's so much more exciting to view music.
Well, it's because you've done the other thing. It's only because you've done the thing, and I've done it too, where like you've rinsed an idea from like start to finish, and like you claim it, and like other people have opinions like, no, this is mine, or whatever, and you're like, oh, you don't like that? What the heck?
I'm talented, like, you know, it's like,
well, that's, you just said it.
It's like it's just let go, man. Like it's hard though.
Yeah, you said the phrase though, and we talked about this a little bit, but like starting off in the industry, your whole mission is like, I want people to know that I'm good.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing.
I want people to love me for this.
Yeah, this is dope. Yeah. Like I deserve to be here. Like my ideas are good because I'm good. And so the whole thing becomes like this game of like, I'm good. See, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that doesn't make good songs.
It does because you're pushing yourself. It kind of reminds me of like, you mentioned John Mayer earlier, but like my favorite John Mayer stuff was when he was actually trying to be like dope and trying to be other people, because like then he made albums like Continuum where he like ripped and he was really good at his craft, and it was like the minute he checked out, I checked out.
Yeah, I
was like, you're not competitive anymore. It sounds weird or something.
Yeah,
like it just felt not. So there is something to that drive to get to a certain place, but the also,
ego is like essential in that process.
Yeah,
it's essential to get you through things and also to learn things. You have to have like a desire. Or else you're just floating, right? Like you have to organize that into like a direction. And ego helps sometimes being like, no, I can do this. Like I can. This is sick. But then once you acquire all the tools, it's kind of freeing to be like, let's just make the thing.
Right.
And whatever that is, like we're gonna release it. So yeah,
one of the biggest things I've learned over the years, I think I've talked about it a little bit, but just it's something I really had to work on with myself from like the early days to becoming, in the band. And it's figuring out when you want to hold your ground. If you have ideas and you throw them out and every single one you're like, no, it has to be that, has to be that, has to be that. Nobody's gonna want to fucking work with you. 1, 2,
No.
you're most likely gonna be wrong more than you're right. But now what I find is I'm always throwing out ideas, and I know they're not all gonna be perfect, and some of them are gonna be what ifs. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? But I don't say no. I really feel this way because you know what I mean. I wait until it's like I really feel strongly about this. And I wait and see if everybody else, if they feel that as strongly as I feel about keeping it in, about taking it out, then I'll let it go.
It's all about like reading the room, right? Because like if everyone's really vibing it, sometimes you might just be a step behind.
Or you just might not be in the right headspace to be on the wave that they're on.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you're just not having a good day and you can't feel what they're feeling.
Yeah. You know the best advice I think I've ever gotten in being in sessions in regards to that is like, dude, the worst that's going to happen at the end of the day is that no one hears this song. And the worst that's going to happen is maybe you take it and like fix it by yourself and send it to them tomorrow and maybe they like it or maybe they don't. But it's like on the day, like I think as long as you just read the room and you're like, okay, I'm not going to kill the vibe here.
Yeah.
Like as long as everyone's up and just like stirring whatever that thing is that happens in sessions, like as long as everyone's stirring the soup, like it ends up working well. And then if you feel like you're going to disrupt the soup stirring, like you're just like, you know what? I'm going to actually just hold that.
Dude, it's such a weird thing that we've become normalized to. Like the idea, it just, what that is when people are in a room making music together. It's such an exciting thing.
Isn't it sick?
To me, like, I don't know. It's such a cool, like, it's so weird.
It's so cool when it's so cool. When it's a bad session, it's like the longest, worst day of your life. I mean, even then it's not horrible, but it can be like pulling teeth. So
it can feel like you didn't like do anything. Yeah. And that's a terrible feeling.
Like even if
like you're just walking in quicksand, kind of like you're just like, oh fuck.
Even if I'm not doing anything and I'm like sitting in the room while something like that's happening, it's such an exciting feeling when something's being made and you know like, all right, this did not exist an hour ago and we're in here and there's some shit that's gonna happen in the next couple hours. It's just such cool.
There's no better feeling when you play one line and the song comes together. Dude, and everybody in the room is like, you know what's
so mental is that's kind of how I feel about fashion whenever I brought it to y'all, because I was like, you know what, like I really have always liked what you guys have brought to songs. I was like, I'm just gonna let them like do their thing. And I remember it first, like, because it's always just been me. So I remember being like, it was almost like it was like handing over a kid, you know. I was like, no, don't drop him, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember just sitting there and I'll be like, I'm gonna let him try stuff. And when you played the Rose on the second verse, that was like, what? Like it just became a whole different thing. And then we reversed them, and that became like the like riser type thing that almost feels a bit like Frank Ocean in the first verse. And
I love there's a spot where the music drops out and I do like a really cheesy synth line where it goes da 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 da, and that's like my favorite part of the song now. Just like small things like that where it's like, but when everybody's happy and they're vibing on like, you know, what you created, you all know that like you all love it and that's all that fucking matters. Like there's no better feeling than just everybody like hyped in a studio. Doing something that like everybody loves to do.
It's like the equivalent of writing your own little hit song, isn't it? It's like you're hearing it on the radio and it's like, this is the best thing ever because it's like new and fresh and no one's heard it. It's the dopest. It's
cool. And like unreleased songs have they have as much potential as you can imagine, you know, like there's something beautiful about it's almost like a fairy tale. It's like a story that nobody's read yet and you're just like, anything could happen with this. Like technically anything could. You know? Like you could come up with this song that nobody's heard and like that song could buy you a house or it could like pay for your kids or like, you know what I mean? It could like, it could change your whole life. Or worst case scenario, everybody looks at you like Jesus. Or your mom loves it.
Your mom pretends that she likes it.
Bro, my mom still tells me that her favorite song is Sunrise, which is the first song KATASTRO ever made.
Really?
It's so funny. I'm like, Mom, we've been trying for 15, 16, and you 17 years. Are you sure that we haven't beat it yet?
You can't. Oh, shit. That's such a mom answer though, you know, because they love the start. Like
she just it brings her back to us in the garage and storming the cabinet for food after band practice type stuff. So
smelling like weed. Sorry, Colleen.
Dude, I'm glad you joined the pod. And
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so stoked you're back in Arizona because when you told me that you were moving back, I was just like, oh man, we're gonna do like endless writing sessions, and we've had bad luck because all of our schedules are crazy. But
our group text is always like, this day, I can't on this day. Can we reschedule for this day? Yeah, and then someone else will be like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
On the day, it's like, oh, I can't. But the times we have been in has been really, really fun.
Yeah,
and really cool. So
tomorrow we're doing it.
It's special.
Yeah, tomorrow's gonna happen.
You can't get busy tonight.
No,
me either.
Yeah,
I think we've all bailed at least once for whatever.
Yeah, we've all been guilty for the. Yeah.
All right, man, dude. Thank you so much for coming. We love you, man. Thank you so much for your impact on KATASTRO and
thank you.
Just being the homie. So
go follow Colton Avery, man. Listen to his music too. Love y'all. Peace.